This is Zestology, new rules for living with energy, vitality and motivation. On a kind of early autumn day, as always, I'm strolling around London and I'm today on Wandsworth Common with a train line on one side, planes flying overhead and a road over there, and it's still relatively peaceful, but you might hear a few trains go by. As I tell you about today's podcast guest on Zestology, someone who can help us with biohacking. Have you ever heard the word biohacker and thought, what does it actually mean? Okay, here's my definition of it. Biohacking, according to me, I reckon, is optimising mind, body and lifestyle to perform at your best. That's what I'm coming up with anyway, and I think that's probably a pretty, as good as any definition. Whether you call it biohacking or something else, essentially it's tweaking certain parts of your life to improve and kind of operate better. And today I'm with one of the world's top biohackers. It's all about optimising with Ben Greenfield. I saw Ben speak in Austin about 6 months ago and left with a long list of action points, things to do and buy. And Ben was named as one of the world's top 100 most influential people in health and fitness fairly recently. He's also coached world's top CEOs, chefs, biohackers, poker players, and definitely a lot of athletes as well. Ben is a brilliant, and as you'll hear, very unique individual. I think that's the best way to put it. Will you do everything that Ben recommends? Probably not. You might not. You might think much of it is a little bit extreme. I'm not sure. But will you come away with a few good ideas that you'll implement? Almost definitely, for sure. Here he is, the brilliant Ben Greenfield with 39 biohacks. Are there actually 39 biohacks? I don't think so, but I just thought it was a good title for a podcast. So 39 biohacks. Disclaimer, if there's 38 or 40, then I haven't actually counted each one individually. But here he is, Ben Greenfield on Zestology. I saw you talk at Paleo Effects and it was great, so thank you for that. And I've got a long list of questions for you. Yeah, I was one of quite a few people.
Was that the talk with all the longevity hacks?
Yeah, and
okay, yeah.
And then I was a bit gutted because some of my buddies got up for your outdoor workout the next morning, and I just slept in because I jet lagged.
Oh, they made it out to the park. You lazy ass! You slept in. What'd you do? Eat a bunch of Austin brisket and then sleep it off?
And then had a massive food coma for about 9 hours.
Meat sweats. I had meat sweats last night. I wore this Aura ring that tracks my body temp, and it always tells me when I wake up if I have a high body temp. But I've really been getting into the ribeye game. Just trying to step up my steak grilling skills. So I make the family ribeye now. You know, I'm a fan of like the whole meatless Monday idea, not excessively stimulating mTOR, having periods of time where you're protein restricted. But I also am a complete foodie, and I'm trying to really nail my ribeye game to make the perfect ribeye steak. So I've got this reverse sear method that I do now, and made the family steaks last night, and it turns out nobody was super hungry for meat except me. So I ate a ton of meat last night. I had meat sweats. I'm rabbit holing a little bit.
And, you mentioned the Oura ring. I've got one as well. What did the Oura ring tell you after you had the meat sweats?
It said that I had a high body temperature and kind of warned me of that because a lot of times that correlates with a low heart rate variability or excessive training or a need to recover. But in my case, it was just because I ate a really damn large amount of meat before I went to bed. And actually all the rest of my sleep markers looked really good. My latest thing that I've found to really enhance deep sleep is about 40 to 60 milligrams of CBD. Just like a really good CBD oil or CBD tincture, and that just shoves my deep sleep percentages through the roof. Interestingly, like smoking weed or THC or something like that has the opposite effect. It actually seems to suppress deep sleep percentages. But man, CBD is really effective for enhancing sleep.
Oh, nice.
At least for me.
Yeah, I've been conducting a little experiment of my own with the Oura ring, and that is with the heart rate variability. I found put my phone into airport mode at night, but I was charging it right next to my bed. When I charge it over the other side of the room and switch all the plugs off near the bed, that seems to raise my heart rate variability, which is, I thought, quite an interesting observation, bearing in mind.
Wait, it raises your heart rate variability when you move all the electricity.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
electricity away from what?
Exactly. My heart rate variability
right?
improves. Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting less electrical pollution while you sleep. So that doesn't surprise me at all. There's this cool device you can use to measure that, by the way. I've been playing with it, just walking around my house, measuring things here and there. I was even measuring this morning my iPod to see if there was a difference, because I've got a few different versions of these waterproofed iPods that I use because I love to swim, listen to things while I swim. So I have this device called an acoustimeter, and it's very simple to use. You just kind of hold it near to any device or any area that you're kind of curious about, kind of how much electricity is coming off of it. Particularly, and I forget the units that it uses, but if it goes above 3, that's a pretty good sign that it's going to cause some biological harm. So I'm kind of obsessed right now. I'm walking around my house just kind of holding it close to everything, seeing if there's anything in my house that goes above a 3. Fortunately, none of my music players go above that level, and I'm pretty safe most of the time. But one thing that jacks it up, actually, it shoves it through the roof. It goes as high as 6. And so the red light goes all the way up to 6 and then stops. So I don't know how much higher it'd go, if it could go higher. But anytime I have it near my phone, if my phone is not in airplane mode, it goes up to a 6. And only that, but when I hold it in my in my hand, right, and I test my body voltage is like, 0.2. As soon as I pick up my phone in the other hand, my body voltage goes above a 3. So not only does the phone itself put out a signal, but as soon as you grab it, it starts to use your entire body as an antenna. Isn't that scary?
It's horrifying. And I don't know if you saw, there's kind of quite a high-profile study which was released this week. It might not have been a study. I think it might have been an article that I read in The Guardian, written by a cancer expert, a PhD expert, who said, all this kerfuffle about mobile phones giving you cancer, don't worry about it. It's all wrong. It's all pseudo-scientific nonsense, which kind of really...
I mean, maybe it doesn't give you cancer, even though I've seen some pretty compelling carcinogen studies.
Well, exactly.
For example, there's some studies in Europe, showing significant increase in tumor growth, but that's in the presence of an existing tumor.
Okay.
My concern is more mitochondrial function, right? We know that the human body is a battery. We know that cells operate on an electrochemical gradient. We know that the electron transport chain is driven by voltage. And anytime that you're pushing the body into that negative of an electrochemical gradient, because that's what that exposure to electricity does. It slightly decreases the electrochemical gradient, so it'll drop from its natural millivolt potential of, let's say, 60 down to 40, down to 20, etc. What happens is you actually disrupt cellular metabolism. And for me, I want my mitochondria to work as good as possible. And I know that if I'm just constantly standing around appliances, bombarding myself with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, holding my cell phone, I'm just changing the gradient of the body. And sure, you could go out and reverse that damage. I could go outside and as soon as I plant my feet on earth or grass, it can restore that electrochemical gradient back to where it was before, get it close. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, or PEMF, can have a similar effect. Sunlight combined with adequate minerals and really good, clean, pure water, even water that is what's called nanostructured water. It interacts with infrared and near infrared light to allow your body to kind of restore its battery potential. So there's all these things that you can do to reverse the damage. But I mean, for me personally, I don't really want a lot of that damage in the first place. So yeah, even if it doesn't cause cancer, it definitely disrupts cellular and mitochondrial function.
Yeah. And Ben, listen, I've got questions for you on everything from organic oils to coffee enemas, but I think this is a worthy rabbit hole to just ask one more on. I use one of these kind of radiation protection iPhone cases, and I know a lot of people do. Do you think, I mean, bearing in mind the testing that you've been doing and how it turns your whole body into a conductor, do you think these phone cases are good?
Yeah, the bad news is I tested it in that case, and it's still through the roof. The question is, like, how much higher would it go if it weren't in the case? But as it is, it maxes out my meter even in the case. So I would suspect the case is probably providing a little bit of protection, but the very best thing you can do is put your phone in airplane mode. If you can, go to the settings, and even though it's a little bit annoying if you're trying to surf the web on your phone, disable the 4G or the LTE, so that you're producing. I think that decreases. It's profound. It's like 70 to 80% decrease in dirty electricity produced by your phone when you switch it off of the LTE or the 4G. And then the other thing you can do is if you're going to walk around with your phone in your pocket, et cetera, and not have it in airplane mode, or you have it on your body or in your coat or whatever, you can slip it into, it's very simple. You can get these little like Faraday cloth wraps that you can put your phone into, like a pouch. You could just go to Amazon, do a search for Faraday pouch. You can drop your phone into that, and even though it will disrupt the signal, and sometimes you might not receive phone calls as readily, it will still decrease a ton of the dirty electricity coming off the phone. So that's one way to do it, is just put it in like a little portable Faraday pouch.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then I know you, when I was hearing you talk at Paleo Effects, you were talking about, some of the setup that you've got in your house. You were talking about some of the many biohacks that you have. Do you have something that cuts electricity in the house? Because I live in central London, there's flats all around, and I have got a timer on my Wi-Fi, but to be honest, next door's Wi-Fi is probably right by my head.
Well, the thing is, I mean, the strength of the Wi-Fi signal decreases exponentially with the distance from the actual router itself, which is why it's always a good idea to put your router, if you have the ability, as far as possible as you can from a sleeping area of the house. Like put it in the garage, put it out in the kitchen. Just get your Wi-Fi router as far away from the bedroom as possible. You're right. Your neighbor might have it placed so that it's literally next to the wall that your head is by while you're sleeping. You can't control that, but you can at least control your own Wi-Fi router, and then rest assured that all these other signals you see from the city probably really aren't as big a consideration as the router inside your house. Yeah. But the other things, I had a building biology do a full audit of my home, and we kind of looked at a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and probably some of the bigger things you can do. One is dirty electricity filters. Like you can buy them from Stetzer, you can buy them from Greenwave, lowemf.com. Anyways, a lot of these websites, or maybe it's lessemf.com, they have dirty electricity filters. Those work very well based on the testing that we did. So any outlet in the room that has something plugged into it, just make sure that outlet has a dirty electricity filter on it. So that's pretty simple, low-hanging fruit. Another thing that is a notoriously high producer of dirty electricity, or EMF, is standard lighting or LED lighting or any form of modern lighting. So the more of your lighting that you can replace with clear incandescent bulbs. So you could do a search on Amazon for clear incandescent or full spectrum incandescent, or even candle OLED. Candle OLED lighting or clear incandescent lighting are two of the best. Halogen lighting, from a biological standpoint, is the most kind of natural as far as simulating what sunlight does. But unfortunately, it operates on an AC current, and it's pretty much impossible to switch it from AC to DC. So those, even though they a lot of biohackers, et cetera, will tell you that those produce the natural spectrum of light. Problem is they produce a ton of this dirty electricity, whereas clear incandescent, or what's called candle OLED, do not. In an ideal scenario, in any area of the house where you need decent lighting, you'll use clear incandescent, or you'll use candle OLED. And then in any area where you don't need that much light, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Use a fragrance-free, paraben-free candle, right? Just like our ancestors would use. Just use freaking fire. And that's really the best way to go. There are a lot of companies now that produce this so-called biological LED, like Lighting Science, for example, or, the Philips Hue system, with the dimmers, et cetera. Problem is that even though those also can do things like, limit the amount of blue light that you're exposed to, or for an area of awakeness or alertness, maximize the blue light that you get exposed to. Problem is they produce a ton of flicker, which is very irritating to the retina, to the circadian rhythm, and they also produce some amount of EMF based on our testing. So even this biological LED, ironically enough, is not that biologically friendly. So I would say replace the lighting, install dirty electricity filters, get the Wi-Fi router moved kind of farther away. those those are really some of the biggies as far as just like the low hanging fruit that just about anybody could do, other than, making sure you disable Bluetooth, disable Wi-Fi on any device or appliance in your home that can have it disabled, which should be pretty straightforward too.
Yeah. And of course, I would say that probably 90% of people don't do that, but probably 90% of people who listen to this podcast do. So I hope so anyway.
Yeah.
Now, Ben, your site has been a great source of information for me on fasting, and I found it really useful. And since I knew that we were going to be chatting, I've compiled a couple of questions that I wonder whether you'd given it the same amount of thought that I have. You probably have. One question I've wondered long and hard about with fasting is taking supplements during a fast, and I've had some slightly conflicting opinions on it. Do you, if you're say doing a 16-hour fast, an intermittent fast with a time restricted feeding window, would you have supplements outside that window?
Any supplement that has any amount of calories aside from the very small amounts of, let's say, magnesium stearate or whatever filler might be used in a capsule, takes you out of a fasted state. Fish oil has calories. In many cases, 10 calories and a couple capsules of fish oil. That will take you out of a fasted state. Is it, here's the deal though. Is it going to cause a bunch of weight gain if you say have a tablespoon of MCT oil, like 30 calories in your morning cup of coffee, or you have a handful of fish oil capsules that might add up to, 20 calories or whatever? No, it's not that big of a deal. But if you are fasting for the benefits of, let's say, cellular autophagy, natural cell death and turnover, or you're fasting for the benefits of decreasing mTOR activate. If you're fasting for the purposes of health, cellular autophagy, decreased mTOR activation, circadian rhythm alignment, anything like that, then it seems that any amount of calories can disrupt that cycle. You don't want to get too orthorexic though, right? Like I use glutathione, and it's a liposomal glutathione, and that's got a little bit of oil in it. I use sometimes phosphatidylcholine, which is really good for my cell membranes. And if I've been traveling a lot, and I know I've been exposed to a lot of solar radiation, et cetera, that's a supplement that I use that's in an oil base. I like to use fish oil just as a general tonic, and the fish oil that I use, it's got some liver oil, it's got some vitamin D, some vitamin A, but it again is maybe 10 calories and a couple capsules of that. I really don't give a shit about that small number of calories. That is giving my body a huge benefit when I consume those in the morning, even if I'm planning on fasting until lunch. Where I draw the line is putting like a stick of butter in my coffee or a couple tablespoons of coconut oil, or getting to the point where I'm literally consuming hundreds of calories that I don't think you can justify keep you in a fasted state for not just cellular autophagy or general health, but weight loss or weight management. So ultimately, as few calories as you can get away with, but most lean people, even, for them taking supplements that have a relatively negligible amount of calories in them, it's not that big of a deal.
Right. And then the autophagy still works. It's still going on if you just have like a fish oil capsule or a vitamin C capsule or something like that.
Yeah, it's slightly decreased, but it's a speed bump. Same thing with ketone esters or ketone salts, assuming that they're not blended with a whole bunch of protein and collagen and everything else that you might make in a smoothie. Like yesterday, I had an 18-hour fast, but I did have a shot glass of ketone esters in the morning, and it's got such a positive effect on anti-inflammatory pathways and on throughput for fuel for neuronal cells, et cetera, that I think the pros outweigh the cons of fasting, but occasionally throwing a few supplements into the mix of a fasted scenario.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And one of the things that I've found really hard with not so much intermittent fasting, although that a little bit, but also kind of a keto or a low carb diet, is rehydration. Really hard to rehydrate. And I think you mentioned Hammer Nutrition electrolytes. Is that something that you've mentioned before?
Well, there are companies like Noon or Hammer
Yeah.
that will make effervescent electrolyte tablets. Those are typically flavored with sesame oil and maltodextrin, and those are about 30 calories a tablet. And so, if you're relying upon those as your primary salt source and you're fasting, they could kind of get in the way of the process if you're doing a lot of them. I'm a bigger fan of just using trace liquid minerals, which you can get in a droplet form from, natural Vitality or AquaTrue. Those are a couple companies that do trace liquid minerals.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of a really good sea salt. Of all the sea salts that are out there, Celtic is the highest in minerals and the lowest in things like iron and lead. So you could use like a good Celtic salt. The other one that I'll use sometimes is salt from Colima, Mexico, called Aztec salt. And then there's also what's called a hypertonic solution that's very similar to seawater. It's really salty, but it works really well for keeping you hydrated and staving off like dizziness and blood pressure dysregulation that can occur with ketosis. And that one you can get from companies like Quicksilver Scientific, for example. It used to only come in these glass ampules, but you can now get it in just like kind of a tearaway packet. And that one's called, I think it's called, Quintron, Quinton, something like that. That works pretty well too. So there's a few ways to skin the cat, but ultimately I'm a bigger fan of just the mineral drops or salt or these little mineral packets versus doing like the electrolyte tablets, which are a little bit more calorie based.
Good. I've written that down. I've got an extended shopping list already. It's not cheap, all this stuff, is it, Ben?
It depends on whether or not you're comparing it to medical expenses, lack of productivity from your brain and your body not working properly, et cetera. Like, you have to look at it in light of the fact that you're increasing health and both cognitive and physical productivity, and also decreasing your risk of medical expenses both now and in the future.
Agreed. Pregnenolone. What do you think about using pregnenolone as a biohack?
That's not something that I use, nor is it something I've really looked into, primarily because any form of bioidentical or hormone replacement therapy, for me, as a WADA-sanctioned athlete who still competes professionally in a sport where you can be urine tested or tested for doping, I can't take exogenous hormones, period. So I really steer clear of them.
Okay. And that must mean that it rules out quite a lot if you're getting tested.
Testosterone, DHEA, Clomid, a lot of these peptides, any IV that's over 30 ml. There's a lot of stuff that I can't touch.
Yeah. Can you take natural testosterone, like pine pollen or something like that?
Well, yeah, but that's not natural testosterone. That's just increasing your own endogenous production. What they'll test for, if they're going to test you for doping, is your testosterone to epitestosterone ratios, and they're looking at a T to E ratio that's abnormally elevated, which you're only going to get from like a testosterone patch or cream or lotion or something like that, or a testosterone injection.
Well, you'll just have to sit naked in front of the infrared light instead.
Yeah, that can actually cause a little bit of an increase in the Leydig cells. That or nude sunbathing can have the same effect. But yeah, infrared and near infrared light on the testicles seems to have a little bit of an impact on Leydig cell activity and mitochondrial activity in the testes, and result in a little bit of a bump in both testosterone and sperm cell production, and also just general, like size and blood flow. So yeah, that's a good little sexual hack.
Well, I think my neighbours will probably not thank you for that one, because I definitely got that from you, and I've got an infrared light here. But I kind of live in a flat with kind of quite big windows, and there's another flat opposite the road. And, the infrared light is in this room next to the window. So what can I say? Sorry, neighbours. Tell me what you did with stem cells into your unmentionables, because I know you wrote this article was it for Men's Health?
Mm-hmm.
What was the research that you did for them?
Well, there's a lot of research behind the use of stem cells or platelet-rich plasma and growth factors for management of erectile dysfunction or Peyronie's disease, which actually a lot of guys deal with. It's like this painful curvature of the penis when it's erect that really makes sex very painful and uncomfortable, or just erections in general painful and uncomfortable. And so they've used stem cells and platelet-rich plasma injections, which is essentially an extract of your blood where you concentrate the growth factors and re-inject them into a joint or an area of tissue like the penis. And so I thought, well, I was doing an article for Men's Health on all the things that guys could do to enhance sexual performance, like everything from freaking gas station dick pills to that infrared therapy that we talked about, to no ejaculation methods, to natural herbal supplements like Sistanche or horny goat weed, or any of these things. And so the stem cells, that was something that I thought, well, if it can help a guy go from bad to good, maybe it can help a guy go from good to great. So I had my stem cells extracted from the fat in my back. So fat adipose stem cells, which have a pretty high amount of what are called MSCs, mesenchymal stem cells, a little bit higher than that of bone, or bone marrow aspirate. And so also a little bit more natural than like umbilical or amniotic from another human, which I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. I just don't know what kind of proteins, what kind of prions, what kind of viruses might be coming into your body if you're using umbilical or amniotic, or what would be considered to be a non-autologous form of stem cells, like not your own stem cells. So ultimately, I don't really want somebody else's DNA and nuclei injected into my body if I've got the option of injecting stem cells grown from my own tissue. So I had the stem cells extracted and grown via an enzymatic process by the U.S. Stem Cell Clinic in Florida. And then I had those sent up to another clinic here locally. And they just do a nerve block into your penis and then inject the stem cells into your penis, typically with some growth factors as well. And the results in terms of sexual performance were pretty profound. I mean, I've done some other things. I had already done platelet-rich plasma injections into the penis. That's called a P shot. A lot of sexual anti-aging clinics will do that. I'd done the acoustic sound wave therapy before, which is basically like a patented sound wave therapy for the penis, and that also works really well. But the results from the stem cells were pretty significant in terms of length of orgasm, firmness of erection, sexual performance. And so that worked really well. I've actually done it now 3 times. I've had stem cells and platelet-rich plasma injected into my penis, and also just my joints, my blood in general. And it really restores like youthfulness and vitality to everything from skin to hair to nails to joints to genitals. I mean, it's kind of a cool science. I would just caution people to primarily, if you're going to do this, utilize your own stem cells, not other people's stem cells. But there are 2 ways that you could get around that. There are what are called V cells, which are kind of like a pluripotent cell that seem to act very similarly to a stem cell. And then also exosomes, which are growth factors released by cells that act as signaling molecules that are often combined nowadays by stem cell practitioners with stem cells or with platelet-rich plasma, but that also can be used in isolation and seem to be acting similar to stem cells. So I would say kind of like the top of the totem pole would be your own stem cells, like fat cells or bone cells that you have harvested and stored that you can re-inject into tissue that needs it, preferably combined with PRP or exosomes. If you can't afford that, then just or let's say you're too old to harvest your stem cells and you're concerned about their age, then you would just do exosomes or V cells. And I would say the most risky at this point, in my opinion, would be relying upon umbilical or amniotic, or you can't do this in the USA, but you can go overseas to do it, placental.
Okay. Because when we saw you at Paleo Effects, you'd had a bit of an accident, and you kind of your bike, and you certainly had some marks on your face. But I remember you saying at Paleo Effects, and I think I listened on your podcast afterwards. You were talking. Was it your shoulder that you hurt as well on that injury?
Yeah, my wrist, my shoulder. I mean, I bit it pretty hard. I got hit by a car, and so I just bounced off the pavement and made love to the asphalt with primarily my face and my head.
And did you use stem cells to help you recover from that as well?
Yeah, I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol, which is basically like a sugar alcohol that increases blood-brain barrier permeability. And after I injected the mannitol, I followed that up by injecting myself with my own stem cells so that once the blood-brain barrier was permeable, the stem cells would pass into the brain and allow for more rapid healing of neuronal cells that had been damaged by the concussion that I had. So I did that, and then I also had a practitioner using digital thermography, like an ultrasound, go and inject my wrist, my elbow, and my shoulder on that left side that had kind of bounced off the pavement. And I felt like I healed up pretty quickly by doing that.
Something I've asked everyone is, what is one book that you would recommend and one tip for living with more energy and vitality? You've obviously given us loads of tips already, but what would be one book that's had an impact on you and one tip?
Oh, for a book, I read a book a day. So there's a lot of books. Yeah, I read a book a day. And so there's a lot of books that I recommend, but I would say really good one in terms of just overall perspective on life and kind of helping you to create a filter to see life through would be Seeking Wisdom by Charlie Munger, who also has another really good book called Poor Charlie's Almanac. He is the partner of he's at Berkshire Hathaway. He's a partner for what's his name, Warren Buffett. So that would be a book I'd recommend. Would be Seeking Wisdom.
Okay.
And then as far as a daily practice for nitric oxide, for nervous system regulation, like the heart rate variability that you were talking about, for a variety of health reasons, including cellular resilience and kind of that hormetic effect, I would say some kind of cold exposure every day. I mean, ideally that's combined with sunlight, good minerals, good water, grounding, earthing, all these other things we can do to enhance our mitochondrial health. But a cold shower or cold soak or a cold bath or jumping into a cold, icy, for me, I love to go down to the Spokane River and just jump in the river. For me to swim across the whole river and come back across the river takes me about 7 minutes or so. And so for me, that's just like if I'm just driving home or I happen to be riding my bike or whatever, like I jump in the river, I swim across the river and back, and man, you just feel like $1 million.
How do you read a book a day?
You open the book and read it.
Are you using some kind of speed reading technique?
No, I've just been reading, since I was a kid. I open the book, I scan the table of contents, I go to the end, see if there's any added matter in the appendix or in the end of the book. Then I begin the book. I read very quickly, tracing with my finger. I have a pencil or a highlighter. I fold over pages as I go, pencil or highlight anything that I come across that's interesting. Have a rule that I cannot turn the page backwards so that I'm always reading with intention and never zoning out as I read. And then tasks will expand to the time allotted. So for me, typically it's between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m. while I am lying in bed, or it is while I'm in the sauna, or I always have a book in my bag. So if I'm ever standing in line or stuck at a train at a stoplight or whatever, I always just take out a book and start reading. So I read a lot. It's kind of part of my job. I research a lot of this stuff, and then I get to go out and tell the world about it. So a big part of this is just, I consider it my job to read just about everything that comes out in the sector of health or wellness or nutrition or biohacking or, any of the type of things that help me to serve people better.
That's great. What's on today's reading list?
Today I've got Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I'm waiting upstairs for me because I've got a lot of these folks I'll interview on the podcast. So I read the book, then I have them onto my podcast.
Thank you so much for coming on Zestology. Where can people find out more about you, your podcast, your supplement company, and everything else going on?
Just Google me. You'll find all my stuff.
Thank you to Ben. Yeah, it isn't cheap, is it? But as Ben says, probably cheaper than dealing with the effects of ill health and old age combined. As always, really appreciate you listening to Zestology. Plenty more coming next week. In the meantime, head over to TonyWrighton.com if you want to get the 3 Zesty Things newsletter. And I'll see you soon.